Well, welcome back. This is the kickoff for 2021 for our Airmen and Space Warfighters in Action, where Air and Space Force leaders share their insights. I'm your host, Orville Wright, President of your Air Force Association, and we're excited to kick off the new year with a great airman, Brigadier General Mike Drowley, who commands the 57th Wing and joins us today from his headquarters at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. And Mike, you probably know for many of us, we'd sure like to be right out there with you again. And of course, we could not hold events like this if it were not for the generous support of our sponsors, who I would share with you, never forget who they're working for and commit every day to ensuring our airmen and our Space Force guardians are absolutely ready to fight and win at every merge. So thanks to Collins Aerospace, Elbit America, General Dynamics, GE Aviation, L3 Harris, Lockheed Martin, NextEra Energy, Oracle, Pratt & Whitney, the Pentagon Federal Credit Union, Raytheon, the Roosevelt Group, and SAIC. So a great thank you to all of our sponsors. Well, as the commander of the 57th Wing, General Drowley leads 36 squadrons that are spread out among 12 installations. And his command encompasses the Air Force Weapons School, the Thunderbirds Flight Demonstration Team, the Red Flag and Green Flag exercises, the Air Force's aggressor squadrons, and the Air Force Advanced Maintenance and Munitions Operations School. A 1996 Air Force Academy grad and command pilot, Mike has more than 200 combat hours in the A-10 and 2,400 A-10 hours overall. We'll get to questions later in our hour together with General Drowley, but for now, Johnny Bravo, the stage is yours, and again, welcome from all of us.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. And thank you to the Air Force Association for all the support that we receive as airmen out here at Nellis Air Force Base. It is phenomenal, whether trophies or scholarships or just the support in general is outstanding, and we very much appreciate. Also, very humbled to be here today to give an update and brag on my team. They are doing incredible work, and so this is a privilege for me to be able to join up with everybody today and pass some updates on what the 57th Wing has been accomplishing. I wanted to start off with a quick vignette. In 2003, March 19th, I was able to lead a 12 ship of A-10s into the initial wave of Operation Iraqi Freedom. So that was the night that combat hostilities started. And my 12 ship of A-10s was tasked with some of the first strikes that were going on in the conflict. As I took off, we got to the tanker stack, which was jam-packed, full of fighter aircraft, all getting their fuel so they could do their strikes. The command and control frequencies were busy as they were trying to build a picture of the threats that we would be going up against. As we started to cross the border into our strike routes, we started getting the threat warning call of threats being able to launch, and the status of our special operations forces that were starting their missions, the status of the targets that we were going after. And I was able to come back and land from that sortie. And now that I'm in the seat that I'm in, when I reflect back, the success of what we were able to accomplish in my personal accomplishment, I think all came back to the 57th Wing. Whether it was a green flag that I was able to participate in, a red flag that I was able to participate in, the instruction that I received at the weapons school, it all tied back to Nellis and the mission that we accomplished here. So from my standpoint, that's why I feel very privileged and humbled to be able to pay back now as a wing commander, because I know I got a tremendous amount out of it, and the team is doing incredible things day in and day out. So if we have to go to conflict again, we are ready, and the team is prepared, and that our nation can have that trust and faith in us. So a lot of people ask, hey, what is the 57th Wing? And sir, you gave a great overview of the different squadrons and missions that it is that we accomplish. But in very big picture terms, when you think about the 57th Wing, General Brown came out with his accelerate, change, or lose. I am the don't lose portion of that equation. So when you look at the 57th Wing and the training that we are doing, it is to ensure that we can win from tonight all the way to about the 3-year time horizon. So that's the time span that I'm working with as a 57th Wing commander and what our team is focused on. Once you get outside the 3-year time horizon, that's more the 53rd Wing and the test community now that really has the propriety of ownership. But within that time horizon, those are the problem sets that I'm focused on and how best to bring together our forces to integrate and to be able to cause the effects on the battlefield that we need to cause and own the airspace above it. So when you look at the great power competition, the 57th Wing is really the conflict portion of that. So we're the great power conflict. And what we provide is you can't compete if you can't win. I owe it to General Brown and to General Kelly, our commander of Air Combat Command, that we can win. And I know that from either our weapons school classes that are coming through, the problem sets that we look at for red flag and green flag, and then just the expertise, the subject matter expertise that we have, whether it is AMOS, our aircraft munitions school, maintenance school, whether it is our weapons school students that are trying to delve into new problem sets. That's the feedback that I try and provide up the chain to ACC and then out to General Harigian at USAF and out to General Wilsbach at PACAF. Here are the problem sets you're concerned about. Here's how our team can win against those problem sets. And so that is really our tactical and operational focus, is how can we ensure that our team is ready to win and not going to lose from tonight until the 3-year time horizon. As you've noted, it's been challenging, especially with COVID-19 going on. But the team has done an amazing job working through that and ensuring that we can still make the mission happen, even with COVID-19. So prior to coming up to the 57th Wing, I was down at Davis-Monthan and the wing commander of the 355th Wing. And some of the subtle differences between the two wings, when you look at how COVID-19 impacts, at an operational wing, you can really make prioritized choices of, hey, I need to make sure this team is ready to deploy. I can take a knee a little bit in this area and pull the throttles back a little bit as we go through cases or mitigation factors and those kinds of things. Unfortunately, at the 57th Wing, everything is very timeline driven. The weapons school happens on timeline. The red flag schedule is on timeline. Green flag is on timeline. And so because of that, we really have to try and work through and maintain the timeline that we have to still accomplish the mission. And the team has done a phenomenal job of either teaming concepts with black and gold teams to ensure social distancing, coming up with distributed ops, which was what we may see in combat and in conflict, and being able to mission plan and still execute sorties and debrief. And so from the aspect of dealing with COVID-19, we have still been able to do everything that we've been asked to do, whether it be red flag, weapons school, green flag. We have had to decrement and retrograde a little bit, but we've still met the intent of getting those exercises done and getting the training that the team needs. Along with that comes airman care and development and the leadership development that we're trying to accomplish at the 57th Wing. And I would say that is always a continual line of effort for us, is how do we develop our airmen as leaders? So if you believe the adage, so goes Nellis, so goes the Air Force, we owe it to our airmen that are at Nellis to ensure they're the best leaders possible, because they're going to lead the Air Force. And so within some of our courses, like AMOS and the Weapons School, leadership development is naturally built into the curriculum and those kinds of things. But from a wing standpoint overall, we're trying to ensure that our airmen are best equipped to lead in an environment in the future that has fog, it has friction, it has a lot of question, and they are able to work through that chaos and still achieve the mission and take care of their people. And so, as weird as it sounds, COVID-19 has actually been an excellent exercise to work that. So wherever time, authority, and control can be delegated to squadron commanders, flight commanders, to make decisions, to take care of the mission and take care of the team, that is what we tried to do, so that way they could work against COVID-19. But it's actually prepping for problem sets that we may see in the USAF or in the PACAF theater in the future. And this is a leadership opportunity for them to work through an environment that may not have a book answer available to it, to learn and to be able to apply those lessons as they continue forward. So while COVID-19 has been a challenge, it hasn't been untenable, and the team has done a really good job ensuring that we get the mission done and working through that. Specifically, as you go through our different mission areas with the 57th Wing, the team has done phenomenal work as far as achieving the mission and then working the way forward on where we go from here. So when you look at the MXG, there's about 200 aircraft of different types on the Nellis ramp at any given time. And they not only support the 57th Wing mission, but they also support the 53rd Wing mission, and ensuring that we are ready to train and test with the best capabilities possible. And when you look at the age of the aircraft out there, their utilization rate and their sortie production rate and their code 1 numbers are phenomenal. Doing a good job, and it's not without challenge. They work through a lot to make sure that we're able to get that. but they are producing on a daily basis, and then also looking at ways that we can continue to innovate as we work towards the future. And that includes virtual reality training, multi-capable airmen that can work in a number of different specialties, and then also ways to rapidly work back in almost an operational test and evaluation for maintenance. Whereas they load tapes, they come up with best practices, TTPs, and tactics, and then that gets built back into the process to make all maintainers better and to lead from the front. So when you look at the amount of air we're producing here at Nellis, the maintenance group has done a phenomenal job in making sure that we have the turn scheme, the sorties available, and the aircraft with the necessary equipment and avionics and capabilities available to it. Hand in hand with that is our AMO school. And so those experts are still churning out our master sergeant, captain level experts in the maintenance community and logistics community to ensure that we are ready for whatever tactical problems may be on the horizon. The AMO school is really shifting their scan downrange right now to see what are the problems on the horizon that are going to be rapidly approaching us here, and how do they focus their efforts appropriately. And really what that means is 5th gen capabilities and how to sustain that and ensure that we get the utilization out of it. Logistics under fire, and then also how do you operate out of austere environments from an agile combat support, agile combat operations, while we look at different theaters, whether again in USAF or PACAF, where you may not be in the most ideal basing conditions. And so the AMOS class is doing phenomenal, still cranking out students. And again, overcoming COVID-19 with distributed ops, but we've been able to meet the requirement. And if anything, COVID-19 has provided us the opportunity to really intrinsically look at a lot of our processes and seeing what we can do to take it to the next level. And so AMOS has had the ability to do that with their syllabus and taking a look at what they are teaching and where they need to go from where they are right now. And so there are future iterations of their syllabus that they're going to be releasing soon. And we've also seen that with the Thunderbirds. And so when you look at the Thunderbird schedule this last year with COVID-19, they were only able to execute about 33% of the schedule, but they were also able to pick up some of the America Strong and support with the Blue Angels. But what this downtime has allowed them to do is really take an internal look at the organization of the squadron, how they fly their maneuvers, how the show is put together, and really try and optimize that and have a good codified set of instructions that they can take moving forward. And so the team has done a phenomenal job from that standpoint. Because we had a down year with COVID-19, we were able to keep almost all the members for the team on for a 3rd year. So that way they'll get another show season year. And then we'll look at a transition this upcoming year with our pilots after they get this 3rd year. And we're able to implement a lot of the best practices that they were able to accomplish during COVID-19. So the team is in their training season. And again, much like the maintenance group and AMOS, during COVID-19, really found opportunities to innovate. So they are also using virtual reality, which we're seeing gains of about 5 sorties and being able to find the formation positions they need to fly and the references that they are striving for to be in that perfect formation position that they have to fly in. They've also have increased their debrief capabilities with a lot of different video and GPS technology. And so, like I said, while COVID-19 has been an impact, the team has done an amazing job taking advantage of that so that way they could apply what they were able to get in the downtime and now evolve and come away with a better product. The weapons school has been going hot and heavy, and we just started our next class today. And so we have about 134 weapons instructor course students, and then about 32 AIC, advanced instructor course, are enlisted subject matter expertise courses that are going on right now. They're just getting into academics. Seen some great strides. We have our 2nd enlisted weapons instructor course now with our combat reporting CRC, which falls under the C2 ABM squadron, the 8th Weapons Squadron. So we were able to patch some of the cadre and the first student going through this class, which adds onto the Joint Terminal Attack Controller WIC that we also had. And so from a weapons school standpoint, again, working through COVID-19, still getting all the academics, the sorties and the flights, and just working tremendously complex problem sets. So that way we can provide feedback to PACAF and USAF in the form of our weapons officers going forth and saying, hey, here's what I got from Nellis, and here's what I got during the weapons instructor course. And this is what we need to do to ensure we have success. I think one of the greatest triumphs of the weapons school is just the continued integration of both kinetic and non-kinetic and emerging capabilities that we see from that school. So the weapons school has been phenomenal in ensuring that space, cyber, and then kinetic operations are all integrated together seamlessly as we look at planning all the way into execution. And then also as we look at emerging capabilities, what is it that we can get in and deep end test within the weapons school to try and ensure that we're getting the most relevant tactics out of the capabilities that our Air Force is bringing to the fight. Finally, bringing all that together is our ops group. And so as of this year, our ops group and our adversary tactics group merged together. And so now the ops group is both responsible for red flag and green flag, and then also our aggressor missions with the 64th aggressors, the information aggressors, and then our surface-to-air missile subject matter experts. And so they have been doing a fantastic job. On the green flag front, we have shifted more in supporting the National Training Center back to major combat operations. And so we're seeing more force-on-force opportunities for us to get out and show our joint team how we are able to integrate air power into the land component and be able to achieve battlefield effects, and why that is so critical. And then we're also getting great TTPs away from a command and control standpoint on how that all comes together to, again, ensure that we have the most relevant information as we go about affecting the kill chain and ensuring that we are hitting the right targets and supporting the ground commander as required. On the red flag front, the team has, again, been doing phenomenal on that side, where we are focusing what we train against to more of a USAF and PACAF flavor to say, General Wilsbach, General Regan, what are the problem sets you're concerned with? And then we do a very focused training repetition on the red flag exercise to ensure the team has exposure to that. They know what it is they possibly may be supporting when they look at those different AORs, and they're that much ready for conflict if they would have to go into it. And then finally, what brings all that together is our aggressor team. And so when we look at it as Blue Air, while I personally don't like it, we want them to be able to punish our mistakes. And they've been doing that as looking at how they can best replicate potential adversaries and aggressors, and then bring that to the debrief so that way we can all learn from it. We're in the middle of a little bit of a transition right now. The 64th aggressors was our Viper squadron of aggressors, and they're going to maintain Vipers. But as we get F-35s on this summer, we're going to see the stand-up of the 65th aggressors with 2 F-35s to now replicate 5th-gen capabilities, so that way we can get that much better training as we go forth. And so when you look at what is special about the 57th Wing and what is special about Nellis, one, the Nevada Test and Training Range is a capability that is a crown jewel that we are able to go out and fly and learn and lead and do those kinds of things. And then our aggressor force that is able to go out and provide us presentations is just one of the greatest things ever, because they collect so much data and can walk back and say, here's what you need to learn from this engagement. And that is what it allows us to continue to learn and grow as a force. And so before I open it up for questions, I would say that's the last thing. And when you look at everything that we have going on here at Nellis, whether it's the MXG, AMOS, Thunderbirds, Weapons School, the OG, the aggressors, the 57th Wing is a very cleverly disguised leadership laboratory. It doesn't matter which group you're in. We are looking for our airmen to go out and lead in the future fight. And so that's what I really view my responsibility as, is if an airman anywhere in the Air Force, comes through a red flag, a green flag, comes through the weapons school, is a member of my own 57th Wing, and then we have to head off into the next conflict, and they look at themselves in the mirror and says, I'm not ready for this, that's a failure on my part. And so that is really what our focus is to ensure every airman that comes through here, whether it's for a red flag, a green flag, a weapons school, or they're assigned here, is a leader and is ready for combat if and when the time comes for it. And so that is really the mission that we have here. And what I can tell this AFA audience is you can be proud of your airmen because they are doing an amazing job of that, and they have overcome some significant challenges to continue doing it. And we're just going to see more and more greatness out of them as they continue on. So, sir, with that, I would humbly open it up for questions and see what I can answer from the team.
Well, that's just tremendous, Mike. Thanks so much. We'll start, and we've got plenty of time for questions here, going through about 12:15. So let's start with General Glenn Spears. Retired General Glenn Spears came up with a great question, I think. And before I do that, however, let me thank Bobby Oates, our AFA chapter president, the Thunderbird chapter. Bobby, I'm sure you're watching. Thank you, and you've built a community of AFA leadership and support out there, volunteers and connectivity with certainly the wing and the weapons center. We can't thank enough. I'd also offer that we're working Bobby pretty hard. She's the chapter president, the regional president, and the state president. So I think I'm not speaking out of turn. She's recruiting for other volunteers that might certainly take on the chapter president role, and we can help you. We'll make it easy and fun from the Doolittle Leadership Center in our national headquarters. But getting back to General Spears' question, what you're focused on readiness to fight and win tonight. Could you just review one more time your priorities, as well as how you're going to continue to realistically replicate the threat? You talked about new aggressor squadron. How about the overall integrated air defense systems? And by the way, if you want to talk about the goodness of the range as well as the limitations in the range and the fact that you need a bigger range, I think all of us in AFA can help advocate for the need for the kind of training, airspace, and capabilities you must have to fight and win against peer threats. So we'll start there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, a couple points on that. From the priority standpoint, it really is that how do I ensure the team is ready to win right now with what we have and provide the best training environment for that, the integration for that, and bring as many capabilities to bear. And when you look at Nellis and the 57th Wing, that is the specialness of it. Whether it's a red flag, green flag, or the weapons school, we pretty much have the whole portfolio of Air Force capabilities and joint capabilities when you look at the Growler integration that we get during the weapons school or joint partners that come in during red flag. And so we really do have a unique opportunity to be able to bring all that together in a real, or in the future, if we go to a simulated environment, to get the best practices and the techniques and the tactics and the procedures. I would say two things, sir, as far as my assessment of how we're doing. We are doing well. We can win, but it's close, and it's close because we don't get those habitual reps when it comes to training against high-end threats, where we can solidify lessons learned and TTP and going against them. And so, from an advocacy standpoint, that's why we will always advocate, like, hey, we need greater capability, either on the range or when you look at our adversary air that we go up against, we want it to be as realistic as possible, as 10 feet tall as possible. So that way, if we do go into combat, we go, wow, this is actually easier than what we did out at Nellis. And right now, we're not at that point. And so that's where we need to make up some ground and continue to make improvements. And then what is truly interesting is when we have the opportunity to go up against some of those advanced threats, when we are able to either use some of our 5th gen assets to play the red air or do some of those kinds of things, it is a tough fight that we're in. And so, make no mistake, we're still in the win category here. But going from win to parity is rapidly approaching, and that's why we got to keep the foot on the gas and keep making strides, because we're losing that edge.
Terrific. Well, again, we're all in how we advocate across the nation, and certainly with elected leaders, on just how important the realism of, if you will, of your training environment. It should be Super Bowl plus.
Yes, sir.
That's who's on the field out there. We'll go to Jennifer Ofiori from Air Force Magazine. She wanted to talk a bit about AMOS and how the training with AMOS is now connected to agile combat employment and what we're doing around the world? For example, are you thinking about picking units up and deploying to a bare base and training that way? And then we'll go to Frank Wolf. Frank, if you'll come up next on the net with your question. So, Jennifer.
And yes, sir, I can answer that from the standpoint of what the AMOS team is doing. And so we've gotten several instructors back who'd spent time down at Davis-Monthan, at Mountain Home, at Seymour Johnson. A lot of these bases that have been leading the way as far as agile combat employment, agile combat support, and have done operations where they have picked up and moved to austere basing. And so what the AMOS team is really trying to codify is what is the supply chain? What does the logistics look like for that? What capabilities do you need in a multi-capable airman to be able to minimize the footprint and stay agile in those type of environments? And so when you look at training your maintenance team or your logistics team, are there areas where your crew chief can also do weapons load? Are there areas where a jammer needs to be modified a little bit so that way it can be multi-use across the board? And so right now they're really in the tabletop exercise, red teaming aspect of looking at some of those operations and what the requirements would be, and then what do they need to train their instructors to be able to do so that way they can go back out to units and now provide that training pipeline, platform, gradebook for life. So that way we know that our airmen are getting that training and they're ready for those types of environments. And so the good news is, like I said, our cadre at AMOS are made up from those bases that have really been leading the way. And now they're really focusing those efforts on what does that ACE look like in the future and how will our maintainers and logisticians be able to support that.
Great. And Frank Wolf, if you'd identify yourself and next question, please.
Yeah, hi, General. It's Frank Wolf at Defense Daily. And I just wondered, in terms of the green flag exercises, what have you been learning in terms of close air support, future close air support? And again, being an A-10 ace, what your thoughts are in terms of the future CAS in terms of the mix of A-10, F-35, the other platforms that are Special Operations Command has apparently been looking at. What your thoughts are in terms of the ideal for close air support to obviously support troops on the ground, and then just on the F-35 question in terms of receiving those for the aggressors. I guess you said this summer. Just sort of if you could elaborate a little bit on the significance of that, and I guess it's the first time in terms of getting those F-35As for the aggressors, but if you could just talk about that.
Yep, absolutely. So on the green flag front, what we've learned is when we talk about major combat operations or a large force on force, what we've seen in our support of the AFCENT theater over time, having done that for 17, 18 years now, is that most of the close air support that we deliver is very focused on a single team, a single entity, and that is where the propriety of detailed integration goes into to support those forces on the ground. When you look at a very mobile battlefield with volumes of fire and deep fires, whether that's artillery or highly mobile rocket systems with an air component, it means that detailed integration needs to be even more so put together from the forefront, and the relationships have to be in place throughout. And so I would say that's the lesson that we've kept relearning and why green flag is so essential. Part of it is just executing the tactics of going out and integrating the land component with the air component and ensuring we're able to deliver fire and keep everybody safe while doing that. But the other portion of that is the leadership relationships that we form with the joint force on, hey, listen, that target set, we can take that and this is how we'll service it and this is what we'll do to support you. In turn, this is what we need to be able to do that. And those are the lessons that we keep learning. And the teams that go out and do that very well and integrate, we see great results. And the teams that don't do that initially have a very steep learning curve in getting there and eventually get there. And that's the lesson learned that we walk away from. So from my standpoint, every platform's got a capability that they bring to the fight, but it's that baseline foundation of detailed integration from the platform all the way up the command and control and the relationships between the land and the air that really make the difference. On the F-35s with the aggressors, So it brings two things for us. We've used F-35s to provide red air, but there's a difference when you talk about a professionalized aggressor force, which is where they study the tactics, they know the presentations, they know the capabilities, and that's going to be the difference maker that the 65th aggressors bring when those F-35s start showing up this summer, is they will be experts in what 5th gen aggressor adversary air looks like, and they'll be able to provide those presentations and then debrief our blue air on what that means. And so that's really going to be the difference maker when we stand up that squadron, is you're going to have a team that's dedicated to deeply analyzing, replicating, instructing, and training our force on the capabilities that our adversaries have where it comes to 5th gen air, and then providing that as a replication so we can learn from it.
Thanks, Jim. Mike, go next to PJ Johnson, who knows a little bit about A-10s. So General Johnson, please.
Johnny Bravo, assuming I'm not making a switch error here. First of all, congratulations. We are all extremely jealous. Well, you're doing what we would all like to be doing, or lie to ourselves and think we could still be doing when we can't. But my question centers around evolving the evolution of Nellis over the years. For some of us fossils in the crowd, we remember a Nellis when we were pups, where the demarcation between training and test was pretty distinct. Red Flag was a place where crews would come from all over the world and get in the reps in carrying out established and validated tactics. Whereas tactics development tended to place up at the north end of the ramp in places like the 422. Is that a demarcation that has blurred? Is there more taking place all over the ramp in terms of test and tactics development now?
Yes, sir. Great to hear from you. Always good to talk to you, sir. But yes, that demarcation, it blurred for a good reason. And like when I talked about my time horizon being tonight to about 3 years, that doesn't mean, though, that we still want those emerging capabilities and those technologies integrated into the live fire or large force exercises that we're accomplishing. And that really gets to that deep end testing. So when you talk about the Air Force Warfare Center priority of operational training and test, and how do we move faster, the relationship between the 57th and the 53rd, between training and test, is critical, because what it allows us to do is try and go out, execute tactics, collect data, feed that back into the system, make improvements, and then immediately go back out the door as soon as possible and see how we've evolved and how quickly we can make changes to adapt under fire. And so the Nevada Tested Training Range allows us to do that. The 53rd, 57th relationship allows us to do that. And then the virtual training facilities that we are building now with the VTTC and the JSE, the Joint Simulated Environment, is going to allow us to do that in a more complex environment through simulation. And so that's where all of it's working together. So I would say we still have our areas of focus where the 57th Wing is primarily high-end training. But when we talk about new capabilities coming on board, I'm always, hey, the 57th Wing's got to be first in, last out. We want it here, so that way we can put it through the ringer with real C2 and real, replicated threats out on the range, and real capabilities integrating in with it to see how it performs. And then we want to maintain it until we're the last one to shut the lights off on it. Because again, when you look at the great power competition, Nellis and the 57th Wing is reflective of what's ever going to go into combat. And we have the capabilities to really put it under duress and see how it performs. So that way our team is ready when they go out and do it for real.
Thanks. We've got a great question on virtual training from Zach Manning. As the COMAC has provided guidance that the path to actual readiness is a virtual training path and environment. Again, to measure readiness versus takeoffs and landings and getting airborne. Can you talk a little bit about how at the 57th Wing you're looking at virtual readiness leading to how we measure actual readiness?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So, for us, it is an augmented capability that allows us to do things that we're not able to do on the range. And so that is the level of fidelity that we want and the standard that we are advocating for as far as what that needs to provide. So when you look at threats today and the ranges that they operate at, it's tough to find the airspace capable to account for that. But you can do that in a simulated environment. What it also allows us to do is, again, if we're flying with a new tape, find fixes or improvements to that tape, go put it back into the simulated environment, run it through, see how it works, back into the jet, and then quickly exploit that and find a way to move faster with our development. So I would say those are the two areas as a 57th Wing consumer of the simulated environment that I advocate and want to use it in, is that augmentation of either range and capability that I can't see on a normal range. Having said that, I never want it to supplant what I'm able to do on the Nevada Test and Training Range, because as you know, sir, there's something to be said for trying to hit a multifunction display button while you're under G and the sweat's in your eyes and the sun's glinting off your targeting pod video. And those are things that can't be replaced in the simulated environment that we have to maintain. And so what we're trying to do is set up a construct that provides, here are the things that fall in the simulated bin, and here's what we will always do live bin, and try and bring those together as closely as possible.
That's great. Could you talk a bit to, for some folks in the audience, I think you could reiterate, while you coordinate as a 57th Wing commander very closely with the new Space Force, you also continue in both the weapons school and green flag, red flag exercises to bring all the major commands together. So obviously significant air mobility command play, global strike command, B-1s, B-52s, B-2s, and soon to be, we hope, B-21s.
Yes, sir.
All integrated constantly into what you do. So it's not just, and many know this and some don't, I think, it's not just an air combat command organization that you're leading. So could you talk a little bit about how you integrate all the major commands?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So when you look at Major General Corcoran at the Air Force Warfare Center, it is the Air Force Warfare Center. And when you look at my weapons school, it is the Air Force Weapons School. And so that is really what is phenomenal about it. And, you know, when I look at my evolution, I went through an O2 Alpha. It was primarily fighter-based. AMC had their own school house, if you will. And Special Operations, AFSOC, was just standing up their schools. And when we operated, everything was stovepiped. AMC did their work. Special Operations Command did their work. Space and Cyber kind of came in after all the planning was done and you know, tried to see what they could do with the plan that was put together. And when you look at where we are today, it is incredibly integrated. We're across the board. These experts know the capabilities that the others bring to bear. They know how to support those or what they can do to augment them and make them that much more capable. And so I mentioned this to some folks. One of my most proud moments when I was the weapons school commandant is when I had a Strike Eagle student talking about a space plan and was talking about it in such detail, you would have thought they were a space officer. And then the space student stood up and started talking about the offensive counter air plan and sounded just like a fighter pilot as they described what they were going to do to support that. And so as we look at the new Space Force standing up, that's one thing that I want to make sure that we don't lose in the transition is the relationships that we've built and the level of integration that we have right now. And we've been able to maintain it with Air Mobility Command and Air Force Special Operations Command. We'll maintain it with the Space Command. But the level of integration, kinetic, non-kinetic, or with all the different platforms that we have, all the way to intercontinental ballistic missile and our command and control is just phenomenal. And as we get these new capabilities on, again, at the weapons school or red flag, we want to pull them into the fold and say, hey, come here to us. We'll integrate you in and see what's the best way to do it. And so the team has done phenomenal work with that. And the experts that we see as a result of it is just, you can't describe how well they do.
To wrap up, as we get closer to 12:15 here, could you also talk a bit, and you mentioned this already, I think, manned-unmanned integration. Obviously, you've been doing that with the wing at Creech. Now the Valkyrie's coming along, and you're starting to look, I know, not more than 3 years out, but your perspective on manned and unmanned integration the next 3 years, and you are an expert on what it should like, what it's going to look like beyond 3 years. So manned and unmanned integration.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you know, for both the standpoint of manned and unmanned integration, to me, what we need to drive forward as a force is what does our future kill chain look like, and what is informing it, and that way we can look at the best teaming, whether that's manned and unmanned, whether that's machine to person interface, and figure out how to bring those capabilities in to now integrate within that kill chain. And so as we move forward, that's a little bit of the tipping point that we are at right now. Is we've got a wide portfolio of capability. whether manned or unmanned, but we need to have an understanding of the future kill chain and how we're going to support and integrate into that. And that's part of what we're working through right now, is the best way to do that. And so I don't have a great answer for you, because we're really trying to figure it out as well, to make sure that we're optimizing it. So we're seeing great results from the integration that we get between manned platforms and unmanned platforms. But to be quite honest, I think we're just scratching the surface on how well. The one thing that I can tell you is you have to have both components. We're not at the point where it's all or none or all or the other. You have to have both components integrated, and that gives you the best bang for the buck possible. And that's the way that we're going to continue to iterate.
Outstanding. Well, a couple more minutes, please. Anything you'd like to cover for this audience? Again, we cannot thank, your AFA cannot thank our sponsors, and certainly the many who rolled into the fight here today. Sir, Johnny, we're with you. We're with you in every possible way. That's probably the message I think most of us would like to share with you. So please,
Yes, sir, I would
closing comments.
I would say two things for the closing comments. One, I feel personally spoiled by being here, because what I have the privilege of seeing is all of this talent in action every day. And I get to go to the B2 weapons school, or get to walk into a red flag debrief, and I am constantly learning something. Either a better way of doing business, or I did not realize that capability did that. And I know I get that from the value of being in the seat that I'm in. And so from my standpoint, it's really, how can our wing give back? Because we have such great opportunity here with the Nevada Test and Training Range, the support that we get from our community, our civic partners, all the mission partners that we work with. There is a responsibility on our shoulders to lead from the front, because we've been afforded so much. And I am the recipient of the entire Air Force's talent. When you look at Air Mobility Command providing weapons school instructors for their C-17 squadron, or when you look at everybody taking 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out of their time to come out and support a red flag, like I get to receive that for 3 years. And so from my standpoint, I always want to try and give back better than I got them. So, how can I polish, improve? And that's tough to do because they are so talented, but how can I take as good a care of them as possible to send them back out the door? And that's the last thing I would leave the Air Force Association with. You can be so proud of the team here. Again, an area where I feel spoiled is I get to see this every day. But as you know, when you're away for a period of time and you come back to Nellis, you get to shake your head and go, okay, I feel secure and good about the hands we were in because of the leadership and the talent that we have here. So if you have not been able to come out in a spell because of COVID-19, please, as soon as you're able to, come out and visit the team, because there's amazing things going on day in and day out. And if you're not able to, please take it from me. The team here is crushing it every single day. They're going after the hard problem sets and just delivering it. And there's not a day that walks by where my jaw doesn't drop just going, man, that is truly incredible what you guys just did. And they do it as just part of their normal business. And so I'm incredibly proud of them.
Well, thanks again. And always, thanks for your leadership and your friendship. We're on your wing. All the best for the WEPTAC that's coming up here near term, and for all of us. Sign-ups are opening up here soon for our virtual Aerospace Warfare Symposium, which is usually held in Orlando, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have a very successful, productive event, 24, 26 February, to build on really much of what General Drowley has talked about today, and our support for dominant air and space forces, and certainly airmen and our guardians. God bless all, and we'll go off the net for a few minutes and then go to our smaller Chatham House Rules session. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Fight's on.